This video will lead you through the process of graphing a trig function, both sine and cosine. On your worksheet, you should see this trig equation, y equals 3 sine of 2x minus 1. The first step to graphing this sine equation is to locate and place the midline. In this example, the midline is -1 because that is the number that's subtracted at the end. I'm going to draw a dashed line in at -1, and you may want to pause the video and do the same. The second step is to identify the amplitude and place the min and max on my graph. In this example, my amplitude is 3 because the 3 is multiplied with the sine. So going to my graph, I'm going to start at the midline and count up 1, 2, 3. So my max is at +2. And then I'm going to go back to my graph and count down 3, starting at the midline, 1, 2, 3. So my minimum is at -4. The next step is to identify the amplitude. In this case, the amplitude is 3 because that's the number in front of the sine. I'm now going to go to my graph and put my pencil on the midline and count up 3. 1, 2, 3. I'm going to place a dashed line at +2, and that's going to represent my maximum. I'm then going to go back to the midline and count down 3. 1, 2, 3, and place a dashed line at -4, which will represent my minimum. Step 3 is to identify the period. You'll remember that the period is given by 2 pi divided by b, where b is the number multiplied by x. So in this case, my period is 2 pi divided by 2. So my period is pi. I'm now going to go to my graph and draw a vertical line pi away from the y-axis. This is actually just at pi. This marks off one period or one cycle of my graph. So a whole cycle has to happen in this box that I'm outlining right now. We're now ready to sketch in our graph. Our graph is sine, so I'm going to follow my sine directions. I'm going to place a dot on the y-axis at the midline and place another one halfway through my period and a last one at the end of my period. I know my graph is going to need to go up and hit the top, down and hit the bottom. And then I'm just left to connect my dots. My last step, step 5, is just to copy the graph if I'm requested to draw more than one cycle. So if the instructions said to draw 2 cycles or 2 periods, just continue the dots and draw the same thing. I'm going to go through one more example, this time with cosine. This is actually number 4 in your packet if you would like to flip and copy along with me. I'll start by identifying the amplitude. Well, that's 5. The midline is +1. I'm going to skip the range for right now because that's easier to see from the graph. And I'll try to find the period. Remember, the period equals 2 pi over b. Well, there's no number in front of my x, so that's just 2 pi over 1. So my period is 2 pi. Now I can start placing things on my graph. My midline's 1, so I'll put a dashed line at 1 for the midline. I'm going to go up and down 5 for the amplitude. So that's going to bring me way up here. I know it's a little bit off the graph. That's okay. To 6 and 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, all the way down to -4. So we have min, and this is my max. My period is 2 pi, so that takes me all the way to the edge of my graph. We're using the whole graph this time. And this time it's a cosine. So I know I start at a max, I swing down to the min halfway through the period, and then I'm back up at a max at the end. So I'm going to have a max on the y, a min halfway through at pi, and a max back up at 2 pi. And now I'm left to just connect my dots. And if I really wanted to draw another one, I could do one on the negative side. So a min and then a max. Ooh, this is a big graph. Great. Now that I have my graph, it's really easy to see that the range starts at -4 and goes up to +6. Now, for the rest of class, you need to continue to work on the packet. Notice that there are 2 sides to both pages. Good luck.